Hey everyone, welcome to KCU, home of the 80 burger. Well, more on that later, but not only are we going to lead with the upset of the week, but he's put down the clipboard to bail out a faltering Ryan Sullivan. Andrew Wadden, tell us about news from down east.
Thanks a lot, Mully. The Mount Allison Mounties started a winning streak back on October 12th of 2013. It stretched over 12 regular season games in AUS regular season play. Now, if you include 3 conference playoff wins, including 2 Loney Bowl titles, that streak extends to 15 games. But like all winning streaks, well, eventually they'll come to an end. Would this be the week that the Mounties' winning streak ends? Let's head to Sackville and find out. 5 minutes into this one, Acadia kicker Colin Murney bobbles the leather. Mount A blocks the punt. Quinn LeBlanc pounces on the pigskin, and it's 7-blank Mounties. Second cue, Mounties up 2. Brandon Lay to Christian Plant, and the Mounties lead grows to 9. Third cue, but cue the comeback now for the Axemen. Cody Cluett launches a missile, and Eli Prochnow comes down with it. 76 yards later, he's in for 6. Mounties lead cut to just 3. MTA added 2 field goals while Acadia added 2 safeties. Last minute of the game, Mounties up by 5. Cluett to Brian Jones. He goes 53 yards for the major. Axemen missed the 2-point convert, but now own a 1-point lead. Dying seconds. Mounties Ryan Lambert going for the win with his 48-yarder. It's wide. Streak's over. Acadia goes into Sackville and stuns the Mounties. What a game for the reigning AUS MVP, Brian Jones. 8 catches, 151 yards, but most importantly, the game-winning touchdown in the final minute to snap the Mounties' long-standing winning streak. The X-Men easily got by the Huskies, taking this one by 35. Tavon Cook connected on 75% of his passes and 3 majors in the win. So there's a new leader on top of the AUS standings board. Acadia takes over the reins. All right, last week, the Sherbrooke Vert Or took the Laval Rouge Or to overtime, only to lose by a field goal. That game turned people's heads and had some believing that the Vert Or, well, they could be for real. Test numero 2 was this weekend, where the green and gold drove the 131 kilometers from Sherbrooke to Montreal to see how they measured up to the reigning Vanier Cup champs. Yeah, but this one didn't live up to the hype. The Carabins got 3 touches from Louis Mathieu Normandin, breezing to an easy win over the Vert Or. The Carabins' home winning streak extends to 7 games, including playoffs. The last time Montreal lost at home, October 26, 2013. The Rouge Or are 3-0 after beating the Gators on the road by 42. Well, at Concordia, the Stingers defended the Hive, winning the 29th annual Montreal Shrine Bowl. So it's the Rouge Or that remain unbeaten in the queue. Montreal and Concordia own the second spot at 2-1.
Last exhibition season, Acadia head coach Jeff Cummins said that the AUS was the most compelling conference in the CIS, and then Mount Allison waltzed away with a perfect season. I guess he was a year early with that take. How does that win alter the order of the conference?
Well, the unfortunate thing for this win for the AUS is I think that it reinforces the notion of this being a mediocre conference. And it looks like it's shaping up to be a bit of a 3-way battle at the top, with St. Mary's bringing up the rear somewhere. But a bit of an altering victory by Acadia. And this game was not as close as it ended up being score-wise. Acadia had 2 punts that they fouled up that Mount Allison got free points out of, and they were throwing the ball up and down the field all day, including the long touchdowns of 75 and 53 yards. So this could have been much worse for the Mount Allison Mounties, and now they have to regroup and take on a rising Sherbrooke team coming out of the queue.
Many were hoping that Sherbrooke would give Montreal the same kind of OT push that they gave Laval last week. That just wasn't the case. Do the Vert Or have the parts in place to win one of those 2 remaining games, especially where the Carabins travel to Sherbrooke, or even that game coming up against Mount Allison?
Well, I'll tell you what, the Vert Or have managed to play both Laval and Montreal very, very tough over the last 2 or 3 years. But if they're going to get over the top, it's going to come down to Jeremy Rock making his teammates better and coming with the best game of his career. fifth-year quarterback at some level. You're going to have to elevate the player, your teammates, to be able to get over the top of those two programs. And I think that is what it's going to take for them to overcome the overall talent differential between the Verrior and the Caravans and the Rouge et Or.
Coming up, the Bisons and the Birds blow up IGF.
The CFL and our partners at Football Canada want to make sure we keep growing, promoting, and investing in a safe game.
Hit!
Football Canada now requires all amateur coaches to be safe contact trained by 2017. By creating a standard of safety for all in our football community, we're making an already great game even better. Make sure your youth coach is safe contact trained, because making a safe game means making a better game.
Welcome back, everybody. This summer, the battle between the T-Birds and the Bisons happened off the field, with the two programs battling to land top recruit Tervel Pinto, who was the most outstanding player for Team Canada's junior team at the International Bowl. Blake Nill and the Birds, well, they won that battle. But would Pinto make a difference going into Manitoba to face the reigning Hardy Cup champs? Could I be foreshadowing something there? It's possible, but Brian Doby and the Herd, well, they just want to win. And this helps that. Teo Dizar rolls out, goes to the air, Jesse Walker hauls it in, he takes it to the house, and just like that, it's 7-0 for Manitoba. Second Q, Bison's up 7-3. Michael O'Connor shows off his golden arm. Alex Morrison makes a sweet grab for the major. T-Birds take their first lead. Minutes later, Pinto proves why he was in such hot demand this summer.
Pinto runs straight ahead. Still going, Pinto finds a seam. Tervel Pinto still going near side. He's at the midline marker. It's a race to the end zone. Pinto's gonna win it, and Pinto goes all the way for the score.
A 103-yard return puts UBC up 10. Minutes later, after a Bison's field goal, this 31-yarder to Will Watson makes that 14. However, right before the half, super rookie Jamal Lyles cuts the lead back to one score with this 21-yard tally. Third Q now, T-Birds up 14. Marcus Davis makes that 21. UBC starting to pull away, but not out of the Herd's sight just yet. Dizar pitches the pigskin to Alex Christie. A few sweet moves later, he's in the end zone. Early fourth Q now, Dizar shows off that arm again. Alex Vitt makes an unreal grab. That sets up this QB keeper from Dizar. The Birds lead cut to just 7, but O'Connor puts the game on ice. He hits Watson, who gets his second major of the game. The Herd, well, they scored a lot, but in the end, the T-Birds scored more, taking this one by 3. Despite the loss, Dizar sets the Bison's single-game passing record, tossing an incredible 519 yards. Let's go to the Battle of Saskatchewan at Griffiths. Mitch Hill is showing off those Huskies' sweet support the troops uniforms, facing off against that man, Atlee Simon in the Rams, whose uniforms are pretty nice too. Midway through the first Q, Simon puts the first points on the board with this 2-yard major. Second Q, Hillis gets a major of his own. Sasky leads 19-10 at the half. Fourth Q now, Huskies put this game away. Drew Burko to Hillis, put another 6 on the board. Sasky wins on Support the Troops night, taking the Battle of Saskatchewan and walk. The Huskies get their first W of the season, while the Rams drop to 0-3. In the Battle of Alberta at McMahon, well, this wasn't even a contest. Not only did Dinos kicker Johnny Mark set a new CIS points record, but the Prehistorics also broke the Canada West record for points in a game, putting up an 80-burger. No surprise that Calgary remains on top of the Canada West standings. UBC tied with Alberta for that second spot. Like I mentioned earlier, Regina, well, they're still in search of that first win for new head coach Mike Gibson.
It was a pivotal part of the game where Saskatchewan was awarded a fumble that wasn't. Then a play later, Regina had an interception taken away from them. Guess what? Next play later, the Rams had a 15-yarder tacked on, then followed up with a Huskies TD. Sean, we have seen this scenario play out before in various Canada West cities. What does a coach do, especially a new coach like Mike Gibson, do to deal with a situation like that? And do you think he did deal with it in a constructive way?
I'll tell you what, that is one of the hardest things about being a coach in the Canada West right now, is having to deal week in and week out with some inconsistencies from the referees. I mean, I felt for them. I empathized with them. There were situations over the course of my coaching career where you're in a situation where something kind of gets dropped out of left field. There's a call, whether you think it's a fumble or there's an interception that gets overturned. And the penalties usually don't get you so much. You learn that penalties are a little bit subjective. But it's when there's a succession of calls that seem to stop momentum and overturn the direction of a game, especially when you're in a situation like Regina where you're just trying to get something going and seeing if you get your first win. So I empathize with him. I think he handled it the best he could. Unfortunately, it comes with the job, and I think I wish I could say to him that he wasn't going to have to deal with it for the rest of the year, but I think that's a weekly thing.
Yeah, it's something that's going to happen from park to park. Would it be too simplistic to say, Gord, that the UBC Thunderbirds put their best athletes in a position to make plays against Manitoba?
Yes and no. I don't think that there's a coaching staff that goes into any game on a weekly basis and goes, well, we're not going to emphasize our top guys this week. But it all came down to execution for UBC. And one of the big differences was the protection held up in front of Michael O'Connor, and he was able to distribute the ball to those athletes, the Alex Morrisons, the Will Watsons, and even the Marcus Davises of the world. Also, there was a big trickle-down effect with Brandon Deschamps coming back into this game. He's the only true running back that UBC has right now, and he's a stud behind in the backfield. And it also moves Marcus Davis back out to the slot, which I think brings a whole new dimension to that UBC offense, and we saw it in the form of a 50-burger.
When a team puts up 80 points, we're talking about 80 burgers at the start of the show and nearly 1,000 yards in offense like Calgary did on their provincial rivals. Is that about recruiting? Is that about making a statement? Or is there more than meets the eye there? Is there something going on behind the scenes?
I don't know that Calgary needs to make that statement, but I'm sure that was part of the motivation. There certainly wasn't a whole ton of easing off. Now, you've got a new offensive coordinator, Calgary still trying to establish his scheme. And I mean, they did sit down a lot of their first teamers before the halftime break, but that number's absolutely astounding, 975 yards of offense. I looked at that number again this morning and just about choked on my Cheerios again. Big statement win put up by Calgary that makes pundits like myself look stupid for ranking Alberta in the top 10 last week.
Yeah, but then again, Calgary did try a fake field goal up 35-0. Coming up, it's X's and Olsen, and we move east. Krown Produce secures produce locally and from around the world for Canadian retailers. Krown Produce is also proud to secure sponsorship of University football on Shaw. Krown Produce, supporting Canadian retailers and Canadian amateur football.
Welcome back to Krown Countdown U. It's that time again. Time for X's and Olsen with former UBC head coach and 1997 Vanier Cup champion, Sean Olsen.
All right, thanks, Andrew, and welcome to another edition of X's and Olsen. Now, in the Canada West, the Regina Rams have stumbled to an 0-3 record out of the gates under new head coach Mike Gibson. Now, Coach Olsen seems to think that they're a lot closer to being a winning football team than it's shown on the field so far. Coach, young football teams make young mistakes on the football field. What has Regina been doing so far this season that has really shot themselves in the foot?
Well, I'll tell you what, the University of Regina is a lot closer than their record would indicate. They could have easily gotten 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 wins out of those first 3 games. Right now, they're making mistakes that are really unacceptable as far as some penalties that really have turned some drives into punting situations. And then there's a lot of sort of schemes and mental mistakes that are there for the taking, but they just don't seem to be able to execute. Let's go to the first clip here. First clip here is a real simple 3rd and 1 scenario. In the Canadian game, you have a yard neutral zone. This has got to be automatic for an offense to be able to convert. Let's roll it forward. Right here, this is in UBC early in the game. You've got an offside. This is inexcusable. Right here, there's an easy conversion. All that has to happen is that the quarterback needs to select the correct hole, and you've got a first down. Same thing happens again early in the game versus the University of Saskatchewan. Again, offside. This is young football players being too eager to get off the football. I don't know if there's something that can be done on the coaching side, but the reality is that these got to be first down so you can continue those drives and get some real meaningful early points on the board.
Now, penalties are one thing that's really going to cost you football games, but the Rams have left some big plays and points on the field that haven't required yellow laundry hitting the turf, particularly in their Week 2 affair against UBC. Coach, what has really stood out for you in this area for the Rams?
Well, I'll tell you what, these two clips I'm about to show you here from the University of British Columbia versus Regina Week 2 are going to drive offensive coaches nuts. You spend all week creating mismatches, scheming up ways to get points on the board, and then you have to execute. Right here, we're going to take a look at this first play. It's a 3rd and goal here down at the UBC 3-yard line. This is in the first half. Let's roll it forward a little bit. Coach Gibson has created a rub play. Let's pause it right there. You see these two receivers coming together right there, okay? They're creating a rub to be able to pick off one of those defensive backs for the UBC Thunderbirds. Right here, you see UBC at the same level. That is always trouble for rub plays. Let's roll it forward. Quarterback here gets caught on the vertical pattern when the underneath pattern is the guy that's wide open. 7 points do not go on the board. That's a critical play in the first half of that game. So this next clip here, final drive of the football game. You end up having exactly what Coach Gibson wants here. You get a tight press corner at the bottom of the screen here. That gives a clear view to the quarterback to be able to throw the corner. Let's roll this forward just a little bit. You see the receiver coming over the strong side. Let's pause it. Right there, perfect, okay? You've got exactly what you want. Obvious corner man look here. We're going to run a deep corner here into the corner of the end zone. It's an easy throw, 35 yards down the field, spot throw. Let's roll it forward. Man cover, easy completion. He throws it up the seam. Incomplete pass. This drive here ended in an interception by Taylor Loeffler that ended the game. There's 14 points that the offensive coaches schemed up to get on the board for the University of Regina Rams that were not executed properly, and that's the difference in the football game. The last set of clips here is going to show you is from their last game versus the University of Saskatchewan. Here's a series of plays that sort of epitomize what's happened to the Regina Rams. Let's go forward here. Here's a punt. The Rams stop the Huskies with a sack. The ball bounces here. Returner's got to make a decision. He lets the ball roll. Let's freeze it right here. Right here, the ball is still rolling. All right? That returner, if he's been prepared properly, will allow that ball to roll into the end zone and either give up a single point or take it out to the 1-yard line. And now in both of those instances, you get out of your end zone. Single point, you take it at the 35. If you get it out to the 1, you get it at 20. He makes a mistake. Let's roll it forward. Right here, this is a long field. No team that is either struggling or not wants to be in a situation where you're coming out of your own end zone. 2 plays later, they're giving up a safety, giving up 2 points, and now this leads to a kickoff. Kickoff here, let's roll this clip forward. Ball's kicked deep. You have 2 guys that lose their lanes. Right here, you have one defender that is getting walled, and you have a secondary defender getting walled out here. Saskatchewan's got a middle return. Joel Pjok is going up the seam here. Let's take it forward a little bit. Big return. He takes it 76 yards down to the Regina Rams 7-yard line. In 3 plays, you have a massive change in momentum. 2 points on the Saskatchewan board, and you also have a huge sort of tilting of the field.
All right, great stuff, guys. We shift from a former Vanier Cup winner in Coach Olsen to last year's Vanier Cup runners-up, the McMaster Marauders, who took to the road this week to the always hostile confines of Alumni Stadium in Guelph. Early first cue, James Roberts to a Dre Fraser, and the Griffins take an early lead. But 3 minutes later, Mac responds. Josh Vanderweerd from Asher Hastings. Second cue now, Guelph up by 5. Roberts keeps the leather and takes it in himself. Griffin's lead grows to 12. Right before the half, it grew to 19. Fraser with his second tally right there. Mac would get 2 majors from Dan Peterman late in the 4th. But this time, they came up short. Guelph takes it by 10. Guelph improved to 4-0. Would Western join them as the only unbeaten team in the conference? Well, let's find out. Queens, Western. Early first cue, Alex Taylor puts the Purple Ponies on the board with his 6-yard major. It's 7-1 for the Stangs. To the second cue, Western up by 14. Will Finch scrambles out of the pocket and finds Harry McMaster, and the route is on. Queens did manage to put up 25 points, including this bomb from Nate Hobbs to Curtis Carmichael, but the Gales defense couldn't hold Western down. They take it by 23. Western, get this, is averaging over 64 points per game so far this year. Windsor, Ottawa. The GGs put up a 50-burger on the lowly Lancers. Ian Stewart caught 2 majors, including this 30-yarder right there, while Bryce Vieira rushed for 1 in the blowout win. Ottawa QB Derek Wendell connected on 70% of his passes while tossing 5 majors. The Ravens improved to 3-1, getting by the Varsity Blues by 4. York gets its first win since September 21st, 2013, taking down the Warriors by 9. So it's Western and Guelph that remain unbeaten on the OUA big board, but how about those Ravens now all alone in second place?
We now bring in Donovan Bennett from Sportsnet. Donovan, Alex Skinner was the biggest transfer story in Central Canada this offseason, and he was big news last week as he left Guelph. I've had the opportunity to talk to people on both sides of this issue, and if they knew the whole story, the folks out there, I think some key figures on both sides would garner a lot of understanding instead of the kind of information that's populating cyberspace right now. Was it fair to activate a quarterback the quality of Skinner so late in the process? He received much less than a full camp thanks to some admin issues, and James Roberts is the guy that the coaching staff had invested a lot into at that point. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, when you're taking in transfers, specifically at a position like quarterback, you're dealing in muddy waters. And quarterback's a position where it's not shared. This is not a timeshare like a running back or a DN where you rotate. Your guy is going to be the leader of your football team. So if you're bringing in a new quarterback and replacing someone who led you in the playoffs last year, it has to be a home run person that everyone in the organization knows is our leader. Think of O'Connor at UBC. Think of Glavick after he's already won a heck and have a relationship with the coach. Think of Tommy Dennison and Michael Folds, guys who were the #1 recruits in their respective classes. Alex Skinner is a nice quarterback. He's a competent quarterback, but he's not that guy. He's not that much better, if at all, than James Roberts. Roberts won the room, so it's going to be an awkward situation no matter what.
The Western Mustangs lead the pack in the OUA once again, but it's been against competition which has not really been in their league so far. Will the rest of the OUA schedule ramp up enough to get them to where they need to be in November competitively?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to look at this team and say, well, you know, you can put on the OUA, a bow on the OUA and the season's done, because we could have been having a very similar conversation at this time last year. After Game 4, at the same time in the schedule, they were a plus 196. This year, they're plus 206. We know how last year ended with 17 dress roster players injured, losing 2 games, and then being embarrassed at Guelph. So I don't think the OUA is wrapped up quite yet. The issue is they are healthy, which is a good thing, and they haven't had to put a lot on tape, which is also a good thing. So when they go into this tough stretch with McMaster ending the season, a game that probably will be for home field advantage and a bye, not a lot of what they have done with some of their multiple running back looks is on tape. The issue is, though, they played a sloppy game of football against Queens because, as you mentioned, they haven't been tested. So I think that's actually going to be a reason for Greg Marshall to be able to keep his players' attention.
Our thanks to Donovan Bennett. Now let's take a look at the games in your neck of the woods. Picks and previews, and as always, we go to Coach Olson.
The game that I'm going to preview is UBC Thunderbirds versus the University of Saskatchewan Huskies at Thunderbird Stadium. 2-1 Birds coming off a big offensive performance, just as the Huskies are also coming off their best offensive performance of the year. Michael O'Connor finally got it going in the second half, had his best showing throughout the course of the game, putting up 4 touchdowns and only 1 interception, and really got UBC's offense ticking. On the other side of the ball, you finally saw the Drew Burko that everybody has been waiting to see. 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and it's going to come down to see who is better able to take care of the football. The real keys to this game are going to be the defensive play of both secondaries, see if they can get some turnovers from each one of those quarterbacks, and how they handle the field position play. Special teams for both sides is going to be paramount in the game. Both have good kicking games, and both have explosive returners. Whoever can flip the field is going to come out with the advantage, but I see UBC as the home team coming out on top in a tight contest.
Since I'm Mr. OUA on this program, I'm going to go back to the OUA and talk about a team that I've been talking about much more than I ever thought I would this year in the Ottawa GGs, and they have another tough matchup this week against the Guelph Griffins. Now, on the Ottawa side of the ball, Derek Wendell's proven to be an absolute stud, and the story for the Ottawa GGs has been good, but not quite good enough to take that next step yet. Now, on the Guelph side of the ball, they cleaned things up last week. James Roberts was a lot more efficient and safe with the football, and they managed to gut out the win against McMaster. But if we see a Guelph team that is more like the Guelph from 2 weeks ago against York that put up 5 turnovers and less like the Guelph team of last week, we'll have a serious game here, particularly with a young slugging Ottawa defense that seems to have not suffered much of a loss from the loss of Ettore Latanzio to the CFL.
I will go back to the Vere Or for my pick as they take on Mount Allison in each team's lone interlock game. This game suddenly means a lot to both teams coming off of losses. Sherbrooke at the home of the defending Vanier Cup champions in Montreal, and the Mounties with their 1-point loss to Acadia. Jeremy Rock can set the Canadian college record for passing in this game. He's going to need a monster game yards-wise with 495, but J-Rock is 34 away from the completions mark. Besides all that, the V&O will need to get more out of the running game and Simone Benoit. This game comes down to 2 things. Mount A's defense were killed by big plays, and that has to stop. And Mounties quarterback Brandon Lay needs to be careful against a Sherbrooke secondary who has produced 6 interceptions in 3 games, including 3 against Montreal. So, okay, folks, let's get to the game.